In the span of 6 years, factories on 4 continents churned out over 100 million firearms, each one reflecting a nation's priorities: speed versus precision, quantity versus quality, desperation versus innovation. World War II wasn't decided by generals alone. It was won and lost in the hands of infantrymen carrying tools designed by engineers who'd never see combat. In this video, we're going to explain the 15 weapons that defined the war and what each one reveals about the country that built it. Every infantry rifle tells a story about what a nation believed would win the war. Some bet on accuracy, others on volume of fire, and one nation made a choice so radical it changed warfare forever. The United States made a decision that seemed almost reckless: give every infantryman a semi-automatic rifle, while Europe armed its soldiers with bolt-action weapons refined in the trenches of World War I. American factories committed to the M1 Garand, a rifle that could fire 8 rounds as fast as a soldier could pull the trigger. No bolt to work, no pause between shots. It was expensive, complex, and in 1936, completely unproven in modern warfare. But the U.S. War Department understood something fundamental. Firepower per soldier mattered more than perfection per shot. When an American rifleman engaged a German or Japanese soldier, he could put twice the lead down range in the same amount of time. That advantage didn't make individual American soldiers better shots, but it made them statistically more likely to survive. Private First Class Harold Weber found himself pinned behind a stone wall in France, September 1944. Across a wheat field, German infantry advanced in a skirmish line. His squad mate beside him worked his Springfield bolt action frantically. Fire, work the bolt, eject, chamber, fire again. Weber just kept his finger on the trigger. 8 rounds, steady cadence, no mechanical interruption. When his clip ejected with that famous metallic ping, he'd already broken the enemy advance. The Garand didn't make him a hero. It just kept him alive long enough to reload. There was one peculiarity the Garand became famous for: that ping. When the 8th round fired, the en bloc clip ejected with a distinctive metallic ring. Some soldiers worried it told the enemy they were empty. Others used it as psychological warfare, ejecting a half-full clip to bait enemies into charging. Whether it mattered in the chaos of combat is debated to this day. But one thing isn't: American infantrymen trusted the rifle that gave them an edge. Germany, by contrast, believed in the philosophy that made them dominant in World War I: precision engineering and marksmanship. The Carabiner 98K was the perfected descendant of Paul Mauser's bolt-action design, a weapon so fundamentally sound that hunting rifles today still use the same action. It was accurate, reliable, and built to tolerances that would make a machinist proud. German doctrine emphasized aimed fire, discipline, and economy of ammunition. Every shot was meant to count. But philosophy met reality on the Eastern Front, in French hedgerows, and across North Africa. German soldiers found themselves outgunned, not because their rifles were inferior, but because they physically could not fire fast enough. Later in the war, Germany developed revolutionary assault rifles like the St. G44, but they could never manufacture them in sufficient numbers. Until the last day of fighting in Berlin, the standard German soldier carried a Kar 98K, a weapon designed for the last war, not this one. The Soviet Union built weapons that reflected its environment and its desperate situation. The Mosin Nagant M91/30 was crude, heavy, and often finished so roughly you could see tool marks on the stock. But it worked in conditions that destroyed more sophisticated weapons. When temperatures dropped to 40 below zero and German guns froze solid, Soviet soldiers kept firing. The rifle was as unforgiving as the land it defended. Long, awkward, brutal to shoot, but it survived Leningrad, Stalingrad, and Moscow when nothing else would. Finnish sniper Simo Haiha used a standard Mosin Nagant with iron sights, not even a scope, to kill over 500 Soviet soldiers during the Winter War. He understood that reliability mattered more than refinement. When you're lying in snow for hours waiting for a single shot, the Mosin didn't win through elegance, it won through endurance. Britain took a different approach entirely. The Lee Enfield No. 4 Mark I had a 10-round magazine, double the capacity of most bolt actions, and its rear-locking bolt allowed a trained soldier to cycle it faster than any rifle in the world. British infantry doctrine included the Mad Minute drill. Soldiers trained to fire 15 to 30 aimed shots in 60 seconds. Early in the war, German troops reported being pinned by machine gun fire, only to discover they were facing riflemen with Lee Enfields. The British philosophy was simple. A fast bolt action in trained hands could rival the firepower of semi-automatics, and at a fraction of the cost. Japan's Arisaka Type 99 reflected an empire isolated by war and desperate to innovate within constraints. Chambered in a powerful 7.7mm cartridge, it was robust and effective, but it also revealed Japan's increasingly detached perspective. Early models included anti-aircraft wings on the rear sight. Japanese infantry were theoretically supposed to calculate the speed of passing aircraft and shoot them down with a bolt-action rifle. It was tactically absurd, a fantasy born from a military culture that valued warrior spirit over practical engineering. The sights were quietly removed as reality set in. Rifles dominated open battlefields, but cities, bunkers, and forests demanded something else. Weapons that traded range for volume. Submachine guns became the tool of paratroopers, tankers, and anyone who expected to fight within 50 meters. Germany's MP40 was the thinking man's submachine gun. Made from stamped steel and bakelite plastic, it was designed for mass production in a way that traditional machined weapons weren't. Compact, controllable, and firing 9mm rounds, it became the icon of German squad leaders and paratroopers. But here's the reality Hollywood doesn't show. They were relatively rare. Most Wehrmacht soldiers never touched one. The MP40 was a specialized tool for specialized roles. Allied soldiers often called it the Schmeisser, but famed weapons designer Hugo Schmeisser had nothing to do with its development. An enduring case of mistaken identity. America brought the Thompson to war, a weapon born in the Roaring '20s and infamous in gangster hands. Firing the heavy .45 ACP pistol round, it hit hard but fired slowly. The early M1928 version, with its drum magazine and vertical foregrip, looked iconic, but it was a nightmare to manufacture. Expensive, time-consuming, machined from solid steel. The military M1A1 was the economy version, stripped of unnecessary features and built to be assembled quickly. It was still heavy, still expensive, but it worked. American soldiers appreciated the stopping power, even if the weight made them curse during long marches. The Soviet PPSH-41 was chaos distilled into a firearm. With a 71-round drum magazine and a fire rate that turned ammunition into noise, it was perfect for the close-quarters hell of Stalingrad and Leningrad. Soviet doctrine didn't emphasize marksmanship with submachine guns, they emphasized suppression. Fill the air with lead and let statistics handle the rest. German soldiers on the Eastern Front captured PPSH-41s whenever possible. They loved the drum magazine capacity and the reliability in conditions that jammed their own weapons. The German army actually printed instruction manuals in German for captured PPSH-41s. It was the ultimate compliment, adopting your enemy's weapon because yours couldn't match it in the field. Britain's Sten Mark II was born from desperation. After Dunkirk, Britain faced potential invasion with a catastrophic shortage of weapons. The Sten was the answer. A submachine gun so simple, it looked like a plumber assembled it from pipe scraps. It cost roughly $10 to produce. A Thompson cost 20 times that. It could be built in bicycle repair shops. It was also notoriously dangerous if dropped, prone to accidental discharge, and ugly enough to embarrass the soldiers who carried it. But it worked. And more importantly, it existed. Sometimes survival trumps pride. Some weapons didn't just arm soldiers, they redefined what infantry could do. Germany's MG42 earned the nickname Hitler's buzzsaw, and anyone who heard it understood why. Firing 1,200 rounds per minute, twice as fast as Allied machine guns. It didn't sound like gunfire. It sounded like fabric tearing. The human ear couldn't distinguish individual shots at that rate. The MG42 was a masterpiece of engineering and a nightmare of logistics. It overheated so fast that crews had to change the barrel every 150 rounds. But German engineers designed a barrel change system so efficient it could be done in seconds, even under fire. The MG-42's descendants are still in service with militaries today. That's not nostalgia. That's acknowledgement of near-perfect design. Sergeant First Class Paul Schneider crouched behind his MG-42 on the Gustav Line in Italy, 1944. American infantry advanced across an olive grove. He fired in controlled bursts. 3 seconds. Change aim. 3 seconds. Traverse. The barrel glowed red. His assistant gunner swapped it out without a word. Muscle memory from 100 drills. When the smoke cleared, the American advance had stopped. The MG-42 didn't make him a better soldier. It made one man the equivalent of 5. Then came the weapon that changed everything. The Sturmgewehr 44. The assault rifle, a concept so new it didn't have a name yet. German engineers realized that most combat happened within 300 meters, not the 800-meter range rifles were designed for. What if you built a weapon that bridged the gap between a rifle and a submachine gun? Lighter than a rifle, more accurate than an SMG, selective fire, and using a new intermediate cartridge. It was revolutionary. It was also forbidden. Hitler initially blocked its development, believing resources should go to proven designs. Engineers built it anyway, under the fake designation MP-43. When Hitler finally saw it demonstrated in combat, he was so impressed he personally renamed it Sturmgewehr, storm rifle. The St. G-44 became the grandfather of every modern assault rifle, from the AK-47 to the M16. But Germany couldn't produce enough to matter. By the time it reached frontline troops in meaningful numbers, the war was already lost. America's contribution to infantry firepower wasn't a gun. It was a rocket. The M1 bazooka gave individual soldiers the power to destroy tanks, something that previously required artillery or another tank. It was crude, simple, and effective. A shaped charge warhead could punch through armor, and any infantryman could learn to use it in an afternoon. The name came from a joke. It resembled a ridiculous musical instrument invented by radio comedian Bob Burns. Soldiers started calling it the bazooka, and the name stuck so well, it became the generic term for any shoulder-fired rocket launcher in the English language. The bazooka democratized anti-tank warfare. Before it, infantry ran from tanks. After it, tanks had to respect infantry. Tanks weren't just vehicles, they were mobile philosophies. Each one revealed what a nation prioritized when designing a weapon that cost as much as a dozen fighter planes. The Soviet T-34 was the tank that saved Russia. It wasn't the most sophisticated. It wasn't the most comfortable. Soviet tankers joked that German tanks had radios while they had hammers to signal each other by banging on the hull. But the T-34 had something more important than luxury: balance. It was fast enough to exploit breakthroughs, armored enough to survive hits, and armed with a gun that could kill German tanks at range. Most importantly, it introduced sloped armor to the mainstream. By angling the steel, the effective thickness doubled, and shells were more likely to deflect rather than penetrate. German tanker Otto Carius encountered a T-34 in 1941 and later wrote, "We hit it dead center at 700 meters. The shell bounced off like a pebble." His Panzer III's gun couldn't penetrate what Soviet factories were mass-producing by the thousands. That night, German engineers began redesigning everything they thought they knew about tanks. The T-34 didn't just fight the Wehrmacht. It forced Germany into a technical arms race it couldn't win. Germany's response was the Tiger Y, and it was everything the T-34 wasn't. Slow, expensive, over-engineered, and absolutely terrifying. With frontal armor up to 100 millimeters thick and an 88 millimeter gun that could destroy Allied tanks from over a mile away, the Tiger was a rolling fortress. Allied tank crews feared it, intelligence officers obsessed over it, but the Tiger embodied Germany's fatal flaw: perfection over production. It used interleaved road wheels, overlapping wheels that distributed weight beautifully, but created a maintenance nightmare. If an inner wheel broke, or if mud froze between them in Russian winters, mechanics had to remove up to 9 outer wheels just to access the problem. A single Tiger required the resources to build several Sherman tanks. Germany built fewer than 1,400 Tigers during the entire war. They were fearsome individually, but irrelevant strategically. America built the M4 Sherman with a different philosophy: good enough, reliable, and made by the tens of thousands. The Sherman wasn't the best tank in any single category, but it was the best tank you could actually get. It was mechanically reliable, easy to repair, and could be shipped across oceans to every Allied nation. Critics called it a death trap, and it's true. German guns could penetrate Sherman armor at ranges where Shermans couldn't fight back. But the Sherman had an innovation most people overlook: a gyroscopic gun stabilizer. It allowed American crews to fire somewhat accurately while moving, a capability almost no Axis tank possessed. In practice, this meant Shermans could shoot first, even if they had to shoot twice. 15 weapons, 5 nations, one war that killed 75 million people and reshaped human civilization. But these weren't just tools. They were decisions frozen in steel. The M1 Garand represented America's belief that industrial capacity could mass-produce technological advantage. The Kar 98K showed Germany clinging to precision when quantity mattered more. The T-34 proved that pragmatic engineering could defeat sophistication. The Sten gun revealed that desperation breeds innovation. And the Tiger I demonstrated that perfection means nothing if you can't build enough of them. American contributions to this arsenal weren't accidents. The Garand, the Sherman stabilizer, the bazooka, these reflected a nation that understood war was won in factories as much as battlefields. While enemies built masterpieces, America built thousands of good enough weapons and delivered them everywhere they were needed. That's not a criticism of anyone. It's recognitions that different philosophies produced different outcomes. World War II was fought with steel, but it was decided by the thinking behind that steel. Every trigger pulled, every shell fired, every tank advancing. Each one carried the fingerprints of engineers and generals who made choices about what winning meant. These 15 weapons didn't just define the war. They defined the nations that built them. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button and subscribe for more World War II breakdowns. Which weapon would you choose in combat? Let me know in the comments. Take care of yourself and wait for the next video.